name is Elizabeth Blanco, the Artsy sister, and we're reading Saturnastra Melina. This is chapter 2, part 1, on the road. She started striking the wood in a rhythmic sort of fashion, and after an hour of her noise, Boris was losing his patience, and he was about to give in to his passionate rage when Melina said, "If you do this thing, you're no different than the slave drivers you so despise. After all, aren't you and I supposed to help our out ladies in distress?" Chuckling Boris said, "I see no lady here." "How dare you? You know nothing about me," snapped Melina. "Point taken. Still, you became a slave the moment you were captured," explained Boris. "Ergo, you lost your ladyship status. Slavery is just a convenient excuse not to pay people for their services, and should they work up the courage and effort, they can easily throw away the artificial shackles placed upon us. But the fact is that your documents hold no true power over me, and I can leave you guys any time I want," said Melina, getting up. Boris' companion said, "I would love to see you try, little missy." Melina sat back down and yawned. "I don't feel like it right now. I am much too comfortable in my seat by the fire. Maybe I will eat tomorrow if I can summon the energy to rise from my lethargy." Boris chuckled when he heard this. His companion was not too amused, and these were known to have boundless physical energy, and a lazy nymph was unheard of. And around midnight, Boris went to bed, and his companion stayed out watching Melina. And in previous nights, they had tried to chain her to one of their legs or to tie her to the horse, and she always found a way to undo her bindings. And for the last 5 nights, the scouts were focusing on keeping an eye on her. And it was during their nightly duties that they noticed that Melina was not sleeping, and she always seemed to be half asleep or pretending to be sleeping. And whenever they dozed off for a second, she was back to annoying them. As a result, neither Scott had gotten a good night's sleep in the last 5 days. she's out waking them, we're like fun half asleep and the shit happened. She just pretended to sleep. This was naturally making them rather irritable, and they were forgetting their nightly matters and were slowly acting like the brigands that they truly were. And when watching Melina, the scout noticed 2 pairs of milky green eyes glistening behind Melina, and he blinked once, and those eyes were gone. And sighing, Melina said, "And why don't you go to sleep, Gareth? I will keep watch for the woods for you, and they won't harm you as long as I'm awake." "Forgive me, my lady," said Gareth, "but I don't trust you." "Why? I haven't given you a reason not to trust me." "Or are you afraid that I will cut your throat while you sleep?" inquired Melina, chuckling. Gareth thought a moment, and then he asked, "When did I tell you my name?" "You didn't," said Melina, yawning, and she started writing cursive letters with a stick in her hand. "How old are you, Melina?" asked Gareth, and he tended to be more sociable when Boris was not watching. "A gentleman never asks, and a lady never tells," said Melina. "I need your birthday for the record. If you don't know when you were born, at least tell me how many autumns have you witnessed," said Gareth, yawning. "As far as I'm concerned, I was never born." "As for autumns, I have seen only 2, and they are certainly rather pleasant," said Melina, picking up a dried leaf. Gareth rubbing his eyes and drank a bit of liquor from his skin. The skin is like, those things that you bring that have licorice or, like a type of container. He was trying to recall a fact about nymphs, and a chilly wind passed by, and he huddled beneath his traveling coat. And he looked at Melina from head to toe, and he noticed her bare, immaculate tiny feet, her thin shoulders, and her delicate robes. And Gareth imagined she was cold, and he went to his tent, and he dragged out his sleeping blanket, and it was made of sheepskin, and he put it over Melina to try to shield her from the cold. And that was the last thing that Gareth remembered of the previous night. When the sun rose, Melina was not near the camp, and one of the horses was missing too. After cursing Melina for a few minutes, Gareth and Boris were greatly surprised to see her return. She explained, "I went to the river to take a bath, and I greatly recommend you take one as well." "You could have run away," said Gareth, smiling sadly. "Why do you come back?" "Because you are a man and I'm a woman, and these are dangerous woods, and let's leave it at that if it pleases you," said Melina. Her explanation was quite unsatisfactory. However, Gareth and Boris chose to leave it at that. Neither were in the mood to argue with the wench, and she had returned, and that was all that mattered. And again she said, "The river is not too far away. I strongly recommend you men take a bath." Boy smelled his armpits and commented, I don't think we smell that badly. By medieval standards, perhaps. Still, when the rider starts smelling worse than the horse, I warrant that that should be a major cause for concern, said Melina. That he smelled worse than the horse he was riding. Time, bro?
11:34.
The two scouts eventually yielded to Melina's reasoning, and she descended from the mount and guided the scouts to the river, and both were greatly surprised by the river's presence, and it was certainly not marked on the map. And Bob was the more superstitious of the two, and he was too embarrassed to ask Melina if she had made the river appear. And the river was relatively shallow, and it had an irregular path, and there were still trees within the riverbed. This further reinforced the belief that the river had sprouted overnight. And the river was in fact only a few months old, and some beavers further up north had built dams direct in the flow of the river. And since it was mid-fall, the river too felt cool to the touch, and the morning weather was not too cold, and the scouts took a quick dunk and changed into their only second set of clothing. And they washed their old clothing with water and a bit of soap, and they waited till noon for their clothing to dry. And after a quick brunch, the trio continued on their journey. The cold water had done wonders to revitalize their dull senses, and this was also aided by their first good night's sleep in like forever. And to pass the time, boys tried to fill out the form pertaining to Melina's birth certificate, and the certificate was needed to do any official business among humans, and he was writing the basic information on a little traveling notebook with a tiny wooden pencil. And he had tied the reins to the other horse, and as such he had his hands free as he rode along, and Melina was riding with Gareth that day, and Boris asked Melina, so what's your name again? And it would be quite a bother to look through my satchel to find the receipt. It is Melina. Melina. That is what you people call me, she said, yawning, and she rested her forehead against Gareth's back. And Gareth, looking back, suggested, why don't you wait till our next stop to do this? If I postpone it, I'll forget it again, and I would prefer to get this bureaucracy out of the way, answered Boris. Suit yourself, said Gareth, turning his face towards the road. When were you born? Asked Boris. Melina shrugged her shoulders in response, and both put it down the 5th month, 15th day of the year 817. Each race had its own calendar, and the human calendar has started counting from zero about 870 years ago, and the reason for changing the calendars remain a mystery. And based on the birthday, Melina was supposed to be 3.5 years old. And do you have the name of your parents? Asked Boris. Yes, said Melina. And their names are? Inquired Boris. Put whatever name you like, seeing as though you arbitrarily named it Melina Soros, snapped Melina. She does have a point, said Gareth. Just fill out the information with whatever. Nobody reads these birth certificates anyway if they belong to a slave. And the notaries only need to make certain that you have a birth certificate. Still, I would like to have some semblance of accuracy, said Boris. And I could give you 2 random names for you to put. If only to get you to stop badgering me with boring questions, said Melina. And she then said, just put the names Cecilia and Ed Sorrow. Don't you know any nymphs' names? Asked Boris, growing somewhat annoyed. Try Harpina. That sounds like a nymph's name, suggested Melina. That sounds a little too much like Harpy, but whatever, said Boris, writing down Harpina instead of Cecilia. The father's name was Caesar. It was not too uncommon for nymphs to mate with regular humans. All nymphs claim to have divine blood flowing through their veins. They neither age nor suffer any illness. They could still be killed in the old-fashioned way, like stabbing them with a pointy end. Time, bro?
14:50.
14 minutes?
Yeah.
According to Undine, nymphs could reproduce with other humans, light elves, but not giants, and if the child was born female, the nymph's traits would become dominant. And male children were adorable, but were more akin to the human counterpart, and they aged and grew sick like regular human beings, and the female litters were born in trees or higher groupings, and males were only one at times. And Boris finished his final notes by writing that Melina had been born in the forest surrounding Aragon. And after Boris was done, the ride continued in its usual silence, and a few scant raindrops occasionally broke the silence. And truly the roads were quite peaceful in those days. And Melina arrived to Sassari one cold winter afternoon, and the grounds in the pavilions were paved in a thin layer of snow. And the pavilions were free-standing structures located in the gardens or linked by a small hallway to the main building. And at the main building, they were large, 1 to 4 story high, and the pavilions housed the courtesans of Sassari. And in the main palace lived the Imperia la Divina, the queen of the courtesans, and all her descendants had the name Imperia for a last name. The Imperial Palace, the Imperia Imperial Palace, and the pavilions all faced a large freshwater lake, and the lake was large enough to require a lighthouse, and its pavilion was connected by a small marble road, and their architecture was more modern and no longer bore the semblance of a medieval palace like the main building. And the main palace was shaped like an L facing the outside, and it had very small first floor window, and the ones in the second floor were larger with iron bars holding the decorated glass design. And the roof was triangular made of iron tiles, and most of the palace today lies in ruin. And according to the logos, the main palace burned 20 years ago, and it is currently being reconstructed. And the pavilion was still in one piece. And the pavilion that Melina inhabited was the most pristine, and all of Melina's possessions were intact. And like the writer's talking about, like when he visited Melina's room in like the modern times, yeah. And I was like back to the past and whatnot. And when Melina arrived, she was greeted by the disdainful stares of the other courtesans, and a good number whispered about her while walking across the garden. And the pavilion Melina was doing, however, was only 1 floor high. However, the roof was high enough to fit 3 floors, and it was called the Dame's Pavilion. The Dame's Pavilion, thanks to its checkerboard pattern floor. And this pavilion too was L-shaped. However, it had an open hallway connecting it to the 2 other halves, and the visitors could pass through the hallway and enter the elegant geometrical garden. And the hallway had a lovely red marble columns with white roofs, and the windows were large and wide and arched, and the interior hallways were white with wooden floors. And these white elegant colored hallways were decorated with paintings, and in between each pair of paintings there were massive portals that led to the living quarters of the courtesans, the salons, the tea rooms, and the playroom. And the structure was ahead of its time, and it was completely devoid of militaristic applications. It was truly a genuine leisure palace. And both Engadas were taken aback by the magnificence of the structure, and they had been away from Imperia's Rosetta Palace for the last 2 years, and the palace had originally a different name. However, since the Imperia's takeover, she had done plenty of architectural projects to beautify her stronghold, and the Dame's Pavilion had been her boldest architectural masterpiece. And while they took their time to admire the new changes that had occurred in the pavilions, Melina had slithered away, and the servant girls and the other courtesans made a game of it, and whoever could find Melina first earned 50 silver pieces. And after 2 hours of not finding Melina, nobody was finding Melina, and based on hearsay, Melina had apparently gone to town, and she had found her companions stupid staring quite boring. And by sunset, Boris and Gada had feared the worst, that Melina had run away. Like that she had stayed with them all the way to their palace, and then when it was time for them to present the slave back to the queen, the shit had disappeared on them. Like, oh my god. We're in so much trouble. Time, bro?
10 minutes.
They had bought Melina for La Imperia la Divina, and she wanted to add to her squad of high-priced courtesans and nymphs, and she had other needs at her disposal. However, the stock had been educated for noblemen and rich bourgeois. At least that was the official excuse. They want to claim After much searching for Melina, the one to claim the reward was a peasant boy, and he showed up at the gates of the palace and said to one of the guards, "Excuse me, sir, I'm here to claim the reward." What rewards? And you got a criminal or something, little boy?" asked the guard while yawning. "No, sir, this girl named Melina was lost, and she said her highness will reward me if I help her find her way back to the palace," said the boy, pointing to Melina. Melina was still wearing her distinctive robes, and as the guards were able to easily recognize her, and one of the guards went to find Boris. A minute later, Boris appeared and said, "There you are. Where did you go?" "I was bored, so I went in to explore the town, but then I got lost. said Melina with her usual directness. "That was quite foolish of you, and the city is very dangerous for a lone woman to wander about without an escort," said Bors. And Melina punched the air a bit and said, "I can take care of myself." "Still, you owe my guy some money for all of the trouble he went through." And Bors nodded, and he handed a silver piece of coin to the boy, and the boy smiled happily and was about to leave when Melina detained him. And she said to Bors, "I thought that the reward was 50 silver pieces." "That was just palace jesting," said Bors, frowning. "A jest, perhaps. Still, one should not jest with money. And just pay what you own so that the boy can get on with his life," said Melina vehemently. And not desiring to argue with the mad child, Bors gave 49 pieces of silver to the boy. And the child had never seen so much money in his life, and he ran back to the city before Bors had a chance to change his mind. And after traveling a month with Melina, Bors and Gabriel had gotten used to obeying her, even though she was technically the slave. She had the charm of an adorable spoiled brat, and even when they had genuine reason to rebuke her, Melina had a way of making them feel guilty for scolding her. Melina was guided to the living quarters of the Imperia, and the palace had quite a martial tone, and there was an ahead of the pomp and glamour that to be found within the pavilions, and knights clad in steel armor would pass from time to time on patrol. And Imperia had quite a formidable standing army, and at times it was believed she had 5,000 knights under her command, though nobody had ever bothered to do an actual head count. Though there were rumors of Imperia's hidden reserves and questionable islands. And Bors knocked on the door of Imperia's room, and she answered with a disdainful, "Come in." Alright, let's leave it here. Bye-bye and God bless.